Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 196th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the Revel Advertising Studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing excellent, Cam. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'll be honest with you, though. This might be a short episode. It's not a very newsworthy time of year for Mizzou sports.
Oh, we're getting close.
And by sports, I mean football or basketball.
June just started. I mean, I feel like that's the clock is ticking on football season, man. That's like the crossover from May to June. It's like, here we are. Summertime.
Yeah. Football season. Yeah. We're right around the corner.
Yeah, it's here.
What will we actually talk about today? Basically, we're going to get the entire episode from a couple of Dave Matter articles. So shout out to Dave for giving us some content. Eli Drinkwitz was at SEC coach meetings, and there was some news that came out of that.
Guess who was there?
Who was there?
Jimbo.
Oh, my gosh. Did Jimbo and...
I saw it.
Jimbo and Nick have a little...
I think they were able to...
square off?
I know. I don't think they did.
They reconciled?
Yeah, they did. Saw the seating chart.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And... looked like Coach Drinkwitz was kind of out in the corner a little bit, you know. I felt some disrespect vicariously, and Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher were not sitting next to each other.
I can't imagine they would be. Yeah, maybe, hopefully they put that behind them and grow from it and can be more mature.
I'm sure they won't
in the future. They've gotten to the place they are now in their lives by just being humble and respectful of others. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, we'll talk about the SEC coaches meetings and scheduling and Sam Horn and a few other things. But first, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube if you're watching us. Hello. Appreciate a subscription there. Leave us a review or a rating on Spotify or wherever you're listening to it in podcast form. And you can support the podcast directly through Patreon, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. Kyle, before we get started in the meat of things, did you see this story about the University of Miami player that is like threatening to transfer if he doesn't get a certain amount of NIL money?
No, tell me about it. No.
I don't know all the details. I just kind of saw a few headlines and tweets about it, but...
Welcome to 2022.
Yeah, the story was kind of like broken, I guess, by the billionaire NIL guy for Miami.
I thought you were going to say like the school newspaper or something like that. I feel like that's how the juicy stuff comes out.
No, the like billionaire guy took to Twitter himself to like, basically disparaging the player for like going back on a deal and like demanding more money or something. But I saw some people talking about like it's basically the billionaire guy is basically asking for this by overvaluing players and just like throwing endless amounts of money at the programs.
Is this a football player?
I can't actually remember.
Wasn't Miami the school that, I mean, they had a huge NIL thing where they were going to pay, I don't even know. I shouldn't even start to tell the story. I mean, they had some thing where like all the players were getting a certain amount or something.
Yeah, and I think it was because of this billionaire guy.
Oh, okay.
Mostly. And so now he's mad at, how this is going. So
what a weird thing NIL has been.
Yeah. We'll talk about that more later as it relates to Mizzou. I thought that was kind of a funny little story. It was just interesting.
Sounds really funny, yeah.
Well, just from that guy's perspective, just like do you want... He was like... He always gave the impression of like, this is what you do. Like, I've got this money. Miami's going to be the best because I'm going to pay all these players a ton of money. Yeah. And then the players are like, yeah, okay. How about more? And he's like, well, wait a second now.
Yeah, you're dealing with basically kids.
Yeah.
In large amounts of money.
And like starting to a little bit realize their worth to the institution a little bit for the first time ever.
Power to the players, right?
Exactly. There is a little bit of news as far as recruiting. There is a basketball player named Keyshawn Hall who is announcing his commitment on Saturday The graphic that he tweeted out had Mizzou, I think St. Mary's, Arizona State,
UNLV,
and UNLV.
Is this Keyshawn Big Guard Hall?
That's correct. And honestly, not much of a recruiting profile presence for him. Weirdly enough, 24/7 Sports does not show him having an offer from any of those schools. Rivals only shows him having an offer from Arizona State. He did have a Cleveland State offer, but I don't know. It's kind of a weird situation. Under-recruited. I mean, not very highly ranked player.
Out of high school.
Yeah. And so I don't think he's coming to Mizzou. I don't think Coach Gates has been on him much since coming to Mizzou. And I think he's going to go to Arizona State.
We'll see about that.
Yeah. We'll see you on Saturday. And then on the football side of things, Makai Lee is a new commitment from the JUCO ranks, and he's an offensive lineman and a nice little depth piece to, just contribute on the offensive line. You can't have too many big bodies to rotate in on the offensive line.
Yeah, just establishing the Coffeeville
Yes.
Community College.
Pipeline,
yeah. I still think there's some uncertainty about Hiron White, and I think he's just really dealt with a lot of injuries in his career, and I think he's currently dealing with an injury, and I'm not even sure if he's going to be able to play this year. So it seems like that late addition is related to Hiron White and his status, probably, which I feel bad for the guy. I mean, Hiron White, it seems like he has been in the program for a really long time and hasn't just been able to play very much.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of start to see this every recruiting cycle. There's that one guy that is high 3-star, 4-star player that you expect a lot from, and then no fault of his own, just can't stay healthy, can't stay on the field, and it's always disappointing.
And that's why you stack recruiting classes, because not everybody pans out.
Right. And yeah, we've seen before entire recruiting classes be just kind of nearly wiped out by injury and careers cut short and stuff like that. We've got some Mizzou football careers that are just getting started, with a bunch of newcomers arriving to campus for the first time.
That was really smooth.
Thank you. Always looking for those transitions. Let's see here. Power Mizzou tweeted out a list of Mizzou newcomers who are on campus, and there's quite a few. I don't know if we want to run through all of them, but our guy Makai Lee made the list. The transfers these are all players that we already know about, but transfers that are now on campus: DJ Coleman, LJ Hewitt, Demarion Houston, Josh Landry. Of that group, Kyle, who do you think has the best chance to make a contribution in year one?
DJ Coleman is the FCS guy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think he probably has a pretty good opportunity there on the defensive line. I think he's gonna probably play tackle. I definitely think he'll be in the rotation for sure.
You would have him above Landry
year
from Baylor?
I think so. I think I probably view them fairly similarly, but maybe just giving the edge to Coleman as far as playing time goes. But that's pretty much a guess. It just coming from completely different situations, literally opposite, where Landry's kind of not playing very much for a really, really good team, and Coleman is really, really productive from FCS. So just basically polar opposites. But both, I would say, probably neither one of those guys will start, but will play a lot. Yeah,
I like Mizzou living in that space, though.
Yeah. Grab a few of those guys every year, see what happens.
Yeah, from either end, I'll take it. Then our traditional freshman signees, we have Valen Erickson, Carmicah Glass, Marquise Graciel, Sam Horn, Tavoris Jones, Jalen Marshall, Curtis Piegler, Isaac Thompson, Jamarion Wayne, DJ Weselak, and Tristan Wilson.
Yeah, and those are the freshmen that obviously were summer enrollees. There's, 8 or 10 freshmen that are already on campus for spring, but Yeah, it's great. I mean, this is a fun time of year, just kind of like all those guys finally getting on campus. It's kind of like, I mean, they were calling it kind of like OTAs almost, kind of like the NFL does. You know, it's just kind of starting to get the whole band together and start learning the playbook and all that.
And it feels like almost like a culmination of the recruiting cycle. You
Yes.
know, they're here, going to start practicing, and I don't know, it feels like the recruitment of these guys is like its own thing, and then their actual Mizzou career, it's like almost you reset everything when they get to campus.
Yeah.
And they'll have this completely new legacy
Right.
from here on out.
Yeah, stars don't matter anymore. You
Right.
got to earn your spot, earn the respect. And we were talking earlier today just about how long it feels like some of these recruitments have lasted. Like Isaac Thompson in particular is a guy that just comes to mind, as he committed early on in the process, and like, man, it feels like he committed to Missouri 3 years ago or something, and is not even on campus yet. Well, I guess he is now, but probably will be another year or two before he's really like a true difference maker. And maybe he's a talented kid, you never know, but typically an average player, it takes a year or two for them to really break the rotation. And I don't know, it's just that journey is just such a long journey, but it's fun to watch those guys. That's what makes following recruiting so rewarding, is seeing those guys even before they're committed and watching them and seeing them make plays on the field for Missouri is just really, really cool.
Yeah, and that's obviously a storyline that we've been keeping up with for literal years, is his recruitment.
Right.
Like you mentioned, and it's interesting looking at this list and thinking about kind of the twists and turns in some of these individual players' stories, like Graciel with there was a time there where we were like, are we going to lose this guy to like Alabama?
Was coming in hot. Yeah. And I mean, Isaac Thompson in Michigan, it seemed like they had some chemistry. So
Thompson was tweeting about, was it actually
UCF?
Yeah, UCF when Coach Gibbs went there.
Yep.
And DJ Weslack is another just
talk
crazy
about roller
story
coaster.
that just ended. That one feels like it just ended fairly recently.
That was the roller coaster of all time kind of recruitments. That was just he released a top 15 at one point and Missouri wasn't on it. It's just ridiculousness.
Yeah.
But he's here now.
It is nice to see 3 offensive linemen coming in as true freshmen. So
yeah, I think this is a good class. Mm-hmm. It's like we just said, it takes so long for some of these guys to make a difference, and we know Coach Drinkwitz has been very successful in the recruiting game, and we kind of are just now getting into that era where all of these recruits are kind of finally getting into an opportunity to make a difference. And still, even this class is probably still a year away. Just a long process. Like in basketball, it's like immediate impact a lot of the times. And in football, it's, gotta be patient.
Right. And and with basketball, it's like if you are a freshman who's like top 150 guy and you're not playing at all, it's like
automatic transfer.
Guess he's gone. We'll try again next year.
Seriously.
Worth mentioning Sam Horn. The MLB draft has not happened yet, so
July 11th, I think,
yeah,
is maybe when that starts.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Coach Drinkwitz spoke about that recently, so we'll circle back around to that. I thought it was kind of cool, the official list that Mizzou put out, to the media and everything, breaks it down. 37 total newcomers, 20 on offense, 16 on defense, and 1 specialist. Nick Quadrini from Springfield, Kickapoo High School.
Wow. My alma mater hasn't been in the greatest light with Missouri stuff recently with Mr. Trayvon Brazil and Anton Brookshire, but this young man,
turn over a new leaf.
He's going to just reverse the trend and be a legend.
Yeah, probably.
Is he a kicker?
Yes.
Wow.
15 players from the state of Missouri. Looks like St. Louis metro area is the most represented with 6 players, and that's including the ones that are already on campus from the spring. including Luther Burden.
Nice.
Okay, so we got the newcomers, and I guess, yeah, let's just go right into talking about Sam Horn and what Coach Drinkwitz said about him recently. I'll pull up the first Dave Matter article that we will talk about. It's called How Upcoming MLB Draft Played Pivotal Role in Mizzou's Pursuit of QB Transfer. So Coach Drinkwitz was more candid than he has been, I think, this entire process. Read the full article for yourself for sure. But Coach was in Destin, Florida at the SEC spring meetings, and the media was able to catch up with him. And they talked about Sam Horn. And I'm just going to read a couple quotes from Coach Drinkwitz. He was asked about the quarterback situation, and he said, quote, "I think I've been very consistent on saying this. I thought Brady Cook and Tyler Macon both had good springs. Us looking at a potential transfer quarterback was really no slight on them. It was more about the one thing that neither one of those guys can change, the amount of experience they have playing college football. In our first 6 games, we have 3 on the road at Kansas State, at Auburn, and Florida, and the best teacher is experience. So in those situations, having an experienced quarterback was something that was important and something that we were looking for. Jack Abraham provides us that experience and accountability and understanding of what those environments are."
You buy it?
I mean, if you're just taking him at his word there, that makes it sound like
Yes.
Jack Abraham is going to be the starter because he has experience. And I don't know if I don't know. If he had a 5-star true freshman quarterback that was like
He basically does.
the #1 pro passer in the country or something, then I don't feel like you care that much about the experience, especially if they were like
Yeah.
a redshirt freshman or sophomore.
Yeah, it did seem, whether Abraham starts or not, it definitely felt like he was indirectly trying to justify the addition. And is he talking to us as fans, or is he talking to his 2 quarterbacks in the room? Like, it's just kind of weird. And like, is he still trying to kind of justify their movements in the offseason with transfer quarterbacks I don't know.
Well, he said about Abraham, he said, quote, "I saw a headline that he was the presumed starter." He said, "I think that was a presumed headline. That is not the case at all. It's an open competition."
Okay.
So then he went on to talk about Sam Horn. He said, "We're very excited about Sam. I think I've been clear since the start of spring." He keeps mentioning how clear he's been.
Which he hasn't.
Right. "I think I've been very clear since the start of spring that I would not name a starter until Sam Horn had the opportunity to compete for that position." I mean, and he says that's what we're about to do.
I just feel like everything he said just basically supports what we've talked about in the last few weeks and months, is that he just has a lot to balance.
Yeah.
He had 2 scholarship quarterbacks. He got a top recruit coming in and needs experience, and trying to keep everybody happy is not easy.
He specifically mentioned the MLB draft. He said, "I'm not naive to the fact that Sam is going to have a difficult choice in front of him in mid-July, as he is an unbelievable baseball player. I've met with his family. We believe he's got a great, unbelievable future here as both a football player and a baseball player within Mizzou football and baseball families." But he basically says he could not stay status quo and only have 2 quarterbacks on the roster with experience, so we needed to have somebody else.
It's fair.
Yeah. And I guess to his credit, he is being fairly consistent throughout this whole process, but it's like...
By being vague.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so with Sam Horn, I mean, what's the biggest draw of going to the draft? The signing bonus?
Mm-hmm.
The immediate salary?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess you could look at NIL as a positive in this situation, that it maybe levels the playing field, definitely gives Missouri an edge that didn't exist before, like a year ago in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think... I don't know. It wouldn't be super appealing to me. I feel like you can almost have your cake and eat it too by, like, not going the MLB route right away and playing college football and college baseball, and then maybe avoiding a little bit more of that, like, minor league grind.
Yeah.
But that's inevitable no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, years you're in farm system.
Right. I think that's pretty much it on Sam Horn.
Think there's any incentive to get Sam Horn some playing time so that he has I don't know, has some skin in the game, wants to give Missouri any more argument for him to stay if they I don't think he's going to win the starting job. I mean, try and work him in. Or are they just like think is that just not
I don't
important
think
enough?
that's it doesn't seem like that's Coach Drinkwitz's style, honestly. I used to love how Gary Pinkel would play a younger quarterback, a series or two every game. And I think that kind of spoiled us a little bit for like being able to see what was coming in the future at the quarterback spot. You don't want to do that in every game with Sam Horn, probably. You want to preserve his red shirt. But I would hope that they get him out there for, get him some play in a blowout or two.
Yeah.
But
and use it as a bargaining chip for his long-term future at Missouri, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, from Coach Drinkwitz, his point of view in the situation. I mean, this is year 3. Had maybe a ever so slightly disappointing season last year. This is kind of I don't know if I would say make it or break it year, but I would say it's an important year for wins to come, and he's got to be thinking about that as far as the experienced quarterback and just making sure we win right now, even at the expense of the future potentially.
Yeah, I just don't know. I just can't imagine the experience that Abraham brings is like that much of a game changer versus Brady Cook or like any of those 4 quarterbacks. I can't imagine that experience is worth that much more than what these other guys bring to the table. But I'm not the coach, and I've not played college football, so. So you had another article, I might be able to pull it up as well, about he talked about recruiting a little bit and talked about the scheduling, the potential future SEC scheduling with Texas and Oklahoma in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still just there. That's what we thought we were going to maybe get some clarity on this situation, like with these meetings, and didn't get that at all. And they're kind of debating between an 8-game schedule and a 9-game SEC schedule whenever Texas and Oklahoma join. And I mean, there's even some rumors that Texas and Oklahoma could join earlier than 2025 and figure out the money later. I don't know if that's true or not, but that they're still just kind of trying to figure out what the schedule is going to look like. Are they gonna do the pod system? I think that's still maybe a possibility, but it seems maybe less likely than it did at one point. But yeah, Coach Drinkwitz talked a little bit about the schedule, but because there wasn't really a decision made, there wasn't really a lot to talk about. But they did talk about NIL, and which that was pretty consistent with what we've heard so far from SEC coaches, that they don't like it very much, or at least they don't like how it's being governed or a lack of governance on the situation. But basically, Coach just said, I think that we're all consistent in that we would prefer if there was a limit on third-party involvement and players making decisions based off boosters' promises of compensation. The original intent of NIL is what we all agreed with, that players should have the ability to utilize their name and likeness for financial gain. But with no guardrails on it, I think it's ascended probably more quickly than any of us anticipated. And so now trying to put our arms around it has been a bit challenging.
So I have some thoughts on that. I totally get what he's saying there. But there weren't really, okay, so like if there were like ready-made systems in place, so maybe this is a dumb example, but a very noteworthy case in NIL stuff is like video game licensing and big picture things that cover a massive amount of players all in one go, right? That's kind of been the type of thing that has brought these conversations up in the past. And I feel like if there was a video game or a jersey deal or a football card deal where it was like, this is a already established system of paying players based on their name, image, likeness from these companies that covers everybody in roughly the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's what he is talking about, like envisioning this, like, okay, now you're here, we'll sell a jersey with your name on it, you can sell t-shirts,
Sure.
and everything will be fine.
And maybe some of our best players will do a commercial for the car dealership down the road.
Exactly. But it is, and so maybe...
And that's kind of the whole reason why the NCAA football games stopped, if I understand correctly, is that like it was getting a little too weird with they couldn't compensate the players that they were using their direct image and likeness on the game.
And yeah, they were getting around it by using generic names, but everything else being exactly like the real life
like
player.
Legitimate, like exactly the same attributes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Height, weight, like jersey number, everything.
And then the players on the cover of the game.
Yeah, that part, though, they were always using a player that had already graduated.
Oh.
And so they just make a deal with that player and that school. But, yeah, so I think he's kind of talking about this imaginary system that was never going to happen. And it's, I feel like, a little bit naive of him.
100%.
Because people were talking about this before this was ever instituted. Like, okay, yeah, you can be on a commercial for the local car dealership, but the car dealership in this school's town is going to pay you $1 million for the commercial deal, and this car dealership over here is only going to pay you $500,000, and they're only going to pay you if you come to school there. So I don't know. Maybe he's looking for, like, you can't negotiate those kind of deals until you're already on campus, but then there would just be like under the table, handshake agreements that
this was always going to happen.
Yeah.
And to think otherwise, I believe I agree with you, is naive. And honestly, I think they always knew it was going to happen. And I'm a little confused though, like why he's taking this angle publicly, because I don't know, is he just kind of going along with the other SEC coaches? Because Missouri is not in the same situation as Alabama in NIL. It's totally different. And because Alabama has been at the top of the recruiting game way before NIL was a thing. Missouri was not. And, I mean, that's the reason why Nick Saban hates NIL is because, yes, it's the wild, wild west, but it also levels the playing field a little bit. And it gives schools like Missouri a chance to land a Luther Burden. Yeah. And they probably wouldn't have beforehand. And so why, I guess, would Coach Drinkwitz, be taking the same angle that people at the top would be taking?
I don't know. Maybe he's just being honest and saying, like, yeah, it's kind of frustrating, trying to navigate this with all these other parties involved. I mean, that's what he talks about, the third party involvement.
Yeah.
So he's thinking, like, I'm just trying to recruit this player, and they're hearing from who knows.
And they're wheeling and dealing a little bit. Yeah.
And I don't know who they're talking to about, all these business opportunities and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure there are some frustrating aspects of it that go on like behind the scenes. And, last summer when we were in on a lot of big recruits, it did kind of seem like the opportunity was there for Missouri and they were being aggressive with it. And now, a year later, it's kind of like I'm exhausted with NIL. And like you said, there's probably a lot of wheeling and dealing going on behind the scenes that's making everything difficult for everyone.
Yeah, probably. I can imagine the coaches feeling like they have less control over the situation because, when it was against the rules to make any kind of deals like this, it would have to go through the coach. And some coaches it did. But now it doesn't even necessarily have to go through the coach at all. And, I don't know. I think I've said it before, there were always going to be growing pains with it. There were always going to be stuff to figure out. And I'm kind of always going to come down on the side of the players, I think. But I can understand the coach's frustration. And as far as like the Nick Sabans of the world, I feel like anything that, even if Alabama's still at the top with NIL, anything that even poses a threat to them dominating recruiting, he's not going to want anything to do with. I thought it was interesting. He said one of the things that we're all trying to figure out is what is public versus what is not public. What is real? What is not real when it comes to NIL? I think we're all still trying to figure that out. he said he was asked how Missouri stacks up in the NIL collective arms race, and Drinkwitz says it's impossible to know. He said, quote, "It's like you're chasing the ghost. You don't really know what everybody else is doing." And that, I think, speaks exactly to, you know, the deals that are happening, and the player might say, oh, you know, Oklahoma is telling me I can get this and whatever.
Yeah, I can see.
And you don't know, like, do we have to up our offer, or is this a bluff to try to get more out of us? Is he coming here anyway?
Yeah, imagine just constantly living in a state of like negotiating with 18-year-olds
and their parents a lot of the time. Oof.
Gonna have to start hiring an agent for college kids.
I mean,
legitimately, are we at that point where that needs to happen?
This might be a hot take and everything, but I think we're headed to, and I'm not even saying this is negative, but it will be a negative for a lot of people. I think we're headed to agents and contracts and that kind of stuff.
Death of the NCAA.
Yeah.
This is how it happens.
And that does not mean, do not hear the death of college football, right?
I agree.
Are those two different things?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it is going to be different though.
Yeah. And it's going to be probably a slow, painful process.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be anything that, you know, it's going to be mostly business as usual for a little while now. Yeah. But I think unless they try to reel this back in, which I don't know if that's possible at this point, mm-hmm. I think we're headed for completely agents, contracts.
Yeah, is it the death of college football? No, I don't think so. And maybe I've maybe moved towards the middle a little bit more than I was a year ago. And, because I do think it is maybe the death, maybe not immediately, but in the next 10 years, I do think it's the death of thinking that your college team is this amateur team and everybody on the team is pulling the same direction and wants the best for the team. And, I think
it's about getting an education.
Right. I think that is going to be a naive mindset to have, and probably has been for, the last few years. But that belief that everybody just is, everybody on Missouri's squad is rooting for the best of the team, the best interest of the team. I think that is probably the death of that kind of amateurism.
Yeah. And there's a part of me that will not love that kind of new direction. There are already parts of it that I don't like.
Right. There's very much a charm to thinking, just kind of almost not really having much access to the players on an individual level, and just kind of thinking that everybody's just wanting to win a championship for their team, and everybody does their
represent
role.
Their school, and be proud to wear the colors and all that stuff. And they still will be. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. And it was always, I think, a little bit of naivety on the part of the fan to think that was what was going on. Yeah. And especially if you want to compete at the highest level. It was always about, getting players to the pros. Yeah. You're recruiting future pros.
Sure.
And you hope you can win games before they go pro. It is worth pointing out, though, Dave Matter ends his article, or in the article he talks about the Missouri legislature passing a law that allows, or amending the NIL law that allows the coaches to be more hands-on in the process. So I think that will help the coaches wrap their heads around what's going on with each individual player and how they're negotiating these deals and stuff. That might be an advantage for Missouri that other states don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Did we the conference schedule thing, 8 or 9 games? Is that?
Yeah, I think that seems to be what they're deciding between, is how many SEC games you play, 8 or 9. But there's all kinds of variations of how they're going to rotate, how you play the other conference, because it seems like they're going to stay maybe with the East and West. How you're going to rotate who you play each year. Are you going to have one rivalry school you play every year? Who's it going to be? There's a lot of variations that they still have to work through.
Yeah, Coach Drinkwitz mentioned, he specifically mentioned Kansas and Illinois as being long-term rivals for Mizzou.
And I would guess if they have a long-term rival from the West, SEC West, that they play every year, it'll be Arkansas.
Yeah. I don't know. If you were would you rather play, if you could only do one or the other, you can only play Arkansas out of the West every single year, or play Kansas and Illinois every year, what would you?
I'd take Kansas and Illinois pretty easily.
Me too. I would be fine with just Arkansas being another team in the SEC that we rotate in the conference schedule.
Yep. That is a fun game, though.
Yeah.
But I definitely take
I feel like it's, maybe this hot take, I feel like it's more fun. I feel like we're kind of having to make it be more fun than it would be if we were playing Kansas and Illinois every year.
Yeah, that's probably fair. It's like the Twitter stuff that gets me going. I feel like that's what makes the game stressful for me.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like that we've had that a little bit with Tennessee from time to time. We've had that a little bit with South Carolina. So, I don't know. I think we could get there with anybody, more or less.
Oh, I can make fun of Kansas.
For sure.
I can do that.
Yeah. That's probably about it for this week. Thank you again to Dave Matter for giving us some content. And
counting down the weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, the bulk of recruiting season for football is this month.
Mm-hmm.
Some big visit days over the next few weekends. I think kind of culminating at the end of June. There's like a huge visit weekend. A lot of big names will be on campus. So I'm sure we'll be talking about more specific recruiting stuff pretty soon.
Raise your hand if you have a ticket to the first game of the season on Thursday night.
Oh, yeah.
All
hands.
three of us raise our hands.
Oh, yeah.
Hope you raise your hand at home or in your car.
In
your car.
Slam your hand on the roof.
In your car, keep your hands on the wheel, please.
Have you ever... I'm about to bring up another shower thing.
Okay.
Have you ever maybe scrubbing your armpit or something and just slammed your hand to the ceiling? I've done that at a hotel or something maybe where it has a little lower ceiling than I'm used to, and just slam my knuckle into the roof.
You punch the sprinkler system and break the seal, and then the sprinklers go off everywhere.
Yeah, that would be a disaster.
Yeah. Is that all for this week?
You think that anybody listens to the podcast while they're in the shower?
Yeah, I bet.
I've tried to do that. I feel like the water's too loud.
That's a good point. I've tried to listen to content in the shower.
You speak up a little bit.
And you just have to switch to music.
Yeah, music's better. Yeah.
But if you listen to us in the shower and have no problem, let us know. Is that all for this week?
Yes. Make me stop talking.
Okay. Special thank you to our Patreon supporters at the $10 level and above. Britt Treese, Brian Smith, Ryan DeMore, Tristan, Ben Smith, Parker, Daddy JD, Luis Hernandez, Tim Keynes, and Tyler Harsel. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. We're on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will see you next week.